my name is Elle, and we're super excited, my cousin and I. Meet my little cousin here. We're going to teach you time today. Do you see our clock up here? You've already learned the inside of the clock, and you learned our clock has direction. And you learn our clock has superstar numbers inside. And you learn our superstars are like a guide. Once you learn the superstar numbers, you can learn all the other numbers in the clock. And you learn the first thing we look at when telling time is we look at the inside numbers. And you already learned how to read our inside hand that points at the inside numbers. So get your superpowers out. We have our superpowers, so get your superpowers out. And guess what? We're going to teach you the outside of the clock. And once you learn the outside of the clock, then we'll put the clock together and you'll be telling time in no time. But first, we're going to review the inside of the clock. Then we'll learn the outside of the clock. All right, get your superpowers. Let's go learn. Let's play a game. Let's remember where our numbers live. Do you remember what number this is? What superstar number is this? Do you remember? It's the number 3. It lives by the red reptile tree by the right. So that's 3. So, do you remember this number that lives in the middle at the bottom? If this is 5, this has to be 6. Yes, you're right. How about this number that lives on the left or by the one lefty dragon? Do you remember? It's the 9. And do you remember what number lives in the middle at the top here? It's the last number, so it's 12. Good job. Do you remember the numbers that live on the right side of the clock or the 3 side of the clock? Do you remember this number here? Well, that's the first number, so it's 1. The next number is 2, and our superstar number is 3, 4, and 5. So the numbers that live on the right side or the 3 side is 1 to 5. Can you remember our superstar numbers that live in the middle? Do you remember this one at the bottom? Well, if this is 5, this has to be 6. So it is. And this one at the top in the middle is the number 12. Just remember, it's the last number. Do you remember the numbers that live on the left side or the one side? Well, if this is 6, then this has to be 7. This is 8, and our superstar number is 9. This is 10, and this is 11. So on the left side of the clock, we have 7 through 11. Okay, it's time to start telling time. Do you remember me saying that the first thing we look at is the inside of the clock? We look at the inside numbers, and we remember that these numbers are called the hour. Well, we have a hand that is called the hour hand. Do you see this hand here? It's so short. It's our shortest hand. And it's so short, it only points at the inside numbers. And we have 2 rules for calling the hour. The first rule is it has to be pointing at the number to be the hour. So, what number is the hour hand pointing at? It's pointing at 2. What if I had the hand pointing over here at this number? Is it pointing at the number? It is. So it's pointing at the number 8. Let's try another one. Look at our hand. Our hour hand is pointing at the number 10. So this is 10. Let's look at the next one. Our hour hand is pointing at the number 12. So remember, all it has to be doing is pointing at the number, and that's the hour. The next rule when calling the hour is the arrow has to be pointing after the number for it to be called the hour. Watch, let's look at this. Is this arrow pointing at the 1? It's not. So that can't be the hour. But is the arrow pointing after the 1? It is. So if it's pointing after the number, then that number wins. So the number 1 wins. Let's try another one. What if we have the hour hand here? Well, who would win? Well, is it on the 4? It isn't. So that can't be it. But is it after the 4? It is. So the 4 would win. Now let's look at the 5. Is the arrow pointing at the 5? No, it's not. So that wouldn't win. Is it pointing after the 5? No, it's not. So the 4 wins. We have another one. Let's look at it. Well, who would win? The 6 or 7? Well, look at the 6. Is it pointing at the 6? It is not. But is it pointing after the 6? It is. So the 6 wins. Pretty easy. That's all you have to remember. It either has to be pointing at the number, like that, or it has to be after the number. That's the rule for it to be the hour. You just learned the first thing we look at when we tell time is we look at the inside numbers. These numbers are called the hour numbers. And you know that there's a hand inside our clock. And it's so short, it points at these inside numbers, the hour. And you know how to read the hand. It either has to be on the number to be the hour or after the number to be the hour. And this is the first thing we look at when we read a clock. And the second thing that we look at when we read a clock is the minute hand. We call this the minute hand because it points outside the clock to the minutes. And do you see how long the arm is? It's so long because it has to point outside the clock. So the second thing we look at is our minute hand. Next, I'm going to show you how we read this clock. We'll see this long arrow here. We call it the hand. See the point here? What number is it pointing at? It's pointing at the 30. So this would be 30. Pretty easy. It just points to the minutes. Let's try another one. Let's look at this one here. Well, look at the tip. It's pointing at the 45, so it's 45. How about this one? Well, let's look at our minute hand. It's pointing outside the clock to the 10, so that's 10. Now let's look at one more thing. Let's look at all these numbers that are on the outside of the clock, where my cousin is standing. Do you see something different about them? Can you tell that we're counting by our 5s? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. And guess what this one is? What comes after 55? 60. So we put a 0 there to remind us that that is 60. So do you see that all we're doing is counting by our 5s around the clock? If you can count by your 5s, it makes it pretty easy. And I want to show you something else. Do you see these little red lines in our clock? Well, these are called ticks because if we started at 0, then we go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do you see? We keep going. We can count to 60 all the ways around. So that's why we count by our 5s to make it faster for us to count. But do you see these ticks here? How many ticks are between each number? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go to 5. Okay, and then here, let's count how many ticks are in between the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you see there's a pattern? There's 4 red ticks here before we get to the next number. Just remember, there's 4 ticks between each number all around the clock. It's just a faster way for us to count. And these ticks mean numbers. Watch. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our ticks just mean numbers. It's just a faster way for us to count all the ways around the clock. And we can just count by our fives to get to 60. So what would we do if our minute hand was pointing at one of these ticks? Do you see the tip of this hand or the tip of the arrow? It's pointing at a tick. Well, remember, those ticks mean numbers. So if I know this is 10, then this one, what comes after 10, is 11. So this is 11 minutes. Pretty easy. Okay, let's look at the minute hand. Do you see the minute hand? It's our longest hand, remember? And it's on a tick. Do you see the tip where it's at? Well, easy way to remember is remember this is 40. So then this tick is 41, 42, 43. So this is 43 minutes. Pretty easy. Okay, here's another one. Wow, we can look at this two ways. Okay, we can say this is 55, so this is 56, 57, 58, 59. So it's on the 59 tick, 59 minutes. So we can look at it this way, or you can go backwards. You can count backwards. If you know this is 60, what comes before 60? 59. So this is 59. So do you see there's two ways we can do it? We can count forward or we can go backwards. I like counting forward. I think counting forward is easier. Something I wanted to tell you is anything from this number to this tick here, which is the 9. Do you notice that the 5 doesn't have 2 digits? It only has 1 digit. And then you get to the 10 and it has 2 digits, the 15, the 20. There's 2 numbers there. That's what I mean by 2 digits. But anything from here to the 9, it's only 1 number. So we add a 0 in front of it. But instead of saying 0, we say O. So this would be O1, O2, O3, O4, O5, O6, O7, O8, O9. Remember, I told you we put this here for the 60, but we also put it there for the letter O. Remember, it looks like the 0, so we say o'clock. So if our arrow would point at this number here, then we just say o'clock. Now, if our arrow would point here, our hand, then we would say O1. And if it pointed here, then we would say O2. If it pointed here, O3. If it pointed here, O4. And even if it pointed here, we still put the O in front of it, O5. Here, O6, O7, O8, O9. And then when we get to this digit, there's 2 numbers, so we just say 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We just say the number after 10. But anything from this number to this tick down here, the 9, then we put the O in front of it. And if it lands here on this number here, we just say o'clock because that means the hour changed. Now it's time to learn all our numbers on the outside of the clock. Do you see our red numbers on the outside of the clock? And see my little cousin, he's standing on the outside. So we're going to learn our outside numbers. We're just going to visualize our clock. Well, do you see my cousin standing at the number 15? He's by the 15. So we have to learn who this superstar number is. Do you remember? It's the 3. So the 15 lives by the 3. Just remember that. And the 15 lives by the red reptile tree or by the number 3. It's on the right side. Now my cousin's moving to the bottom of the clock in the middle to the number 30. Do you remember who lives at the bottom of the clock in the inside? The number 6. So that's easy. The number 30 lives by the number 6. Now, my cousin's moving to the number 45. Do you see the 45? It's on the left side of the clock. And it lives by the capital L building and the one lefty dragon. Do you remember what the superstar number is? If we're counting by threes, this is 3, 6, 9. So this is 9. So the 45 lives by the number 9. Now we're moving to the top of the clock, in the middle. And do you see our O clock? Do you know what number it lives by? It's the last number, the number 12. So, do you see? You can just remember our numbers, our superstar numbers on the outside. There's superstar numbers on the outside. Did you know that? We have superstar numbers here. So, can you remember the superstar that lives on the outside right here? Well, just remember, this is the 3. Can you remember the number that lives here? If you can't remember, then remember, we're counting by our 5, so start here. 5, 10, 15. Let's check and see if we got it right. It's 15. Okay, let's move over here. Can you remember what superstar lives here? Well, here's the 6. If this is 15, 20, 25, 30, that should be 30. Let's check. It is. The superstar's 30. So let's go to the next superstar that's on the left by the one lefty dragon side. Well, if this is 9, remember this superstar here, it's 45. Let's check. And if you couldn't remember if it was 45, if you remember, this is 30, 35, 40, 45. This is simple. Okay, let's go to the top of the clock. Now, do you remember who this superstar is? Remember, we say O. It's the O. Pretty easy. And the O lives by the 12. All right, little cousin, move to the next superstar. Can you remember what that superstar is that lives by the 3? Well, if you don't remember, just remember we're counting by our 5, so start here. 5, 10, 15. 15 lives by the 3. Now, can you remember what numbers live before the 15? We go up. So this should be 5 and 10. Let's check. 5 and 10 come before the 15. Now, let's figure out what numbers come after 15. After, you would go down. So 20 and 25 live there. This is too simple. All right, cousin, go to the superstar at the bottom of the clock. Do you remember what superstar lives there? 30. Remember, 30 lives by the 6. And can you remember what numbers come after the 30? Well, that's simple. We're counting by our 5s. 35, 40 lives there. Remember, just count by your 5s. Okay, little cousin's going to the next superstar number. Well, can you remember what superstar that is on the outside? Well, if this is 9, the 45 lives here. And if you don't know, remember, just count by your 5s. We know this is 30, 35, 40, 45. So it's 45. Now, what would come after 45? Just go to the top. This right here, if this is 45, then this has to be 50 and 55. Let's check. 50 and 55. We got it. Okay, let's go to the top of the clock in the middle. Do you remember the superstar that lives there? It's the O. So all you have to do is just remember the superstars. And if you can remember what the superstar numbers are, then you can remember what comes before or what comes after. Something else I want to show you if you're an older student and you know your multiplication. If you say 5 times 1 equals 5. If we go to the next one, 5 times 2 equals 10. And then if we go to the next one, 5 times 3 equals 15. Now, if we go 5 times 4 equals 20. 5 times 5 equals 25. Do you see? You could do your multiplication. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 7 is 35. 5 times 8 is 40. And if we were to do 5 times 9, that's easy. It's 45. And then if we were to do 5 times 10, that's easy. That's 50. And then we could do 5 times 11, 55. And then when we get to the top, just remember, we just say o'clock or O. So you can do your times tables. If you're an older student and you know your timetables, you can just do your timetables. And if you're a younger student, you just learned that 5 times 1 is 5. So you just learned your timetables. Okay, little cousin, are you ready? Let's show them how to put the clock together. They've already learned how to tell time. Now it's just putting it together for them. Remember, the first thing we do is we look at the inside hand. So, what if our hand was on that number there? Well, we would look at the shortest hand, our hour hand, and it's pointing at the inside number, so that's 2. That's our first step. The next step is we look at our minute hand. What if our minute hand was pointing to our outside number, to the 30? Then we just put it together. We read the smallest hand first, the shortest hand, the inside numbers, and it's pointing at 2. And then we read the minute hand, and it's pointing at the 30. So we just put it together, 2:30. That's all you do to tell time. You read the shortest hand first, then the longest hand. Okay, let's see if you can do the next one. Well, remember, we read the shortest hand, the hand that's pointing to the inside numbers, and it's pointing at 10. And this one here, well, if this is 10, this is 11, 12, 13. It's on the 13. So we put it together, 10, 13. Pretty easy. What if we had something like this? It's the same rules. You read the shortest hand, the inside numbers, and it's pointing at the 12. And remember, when the minute hand is pointing at this up here, we say o'clock. So it's 12 o'clock. Pretty easy. Well, what if we had something like this? Same rules. Read the smallest hand, the shortest hand, and read the inside numbers. It's 8 o'clock. Pretty easy. What if we had something like this? Well, that's easy. It's either going to be the 7 or the 8. Remember, is it on the 7? No, it's after the 7, so the 7 wins. It's 7, and then we look at the minute hand. This is 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's 7:13. Okay, let's try one more. Well, that's easy. All we do is read the small hand first. It's on the 6, and this is on 30. So 6:30. So see, you can read any clock that's given to you. Before we leave, we wanted to show you one more thing that you might come across when you look at clocks. Remember, we said they can be different shapes, but now that you know how the clock works, you can read any clock. But sometimes you may come across a clock that doesn't have the outside numbers. See, like this clock? So, if it doesn't have the outside numbers, that's okay. You remembered all the numbers. So just remember what the outside numbers are. Remember, our superstar number is 15, 30, 45, and remember, this is o'clock. So once you remember the superstar numbers, then you can go back and figure out what the other numbers are. So see, you can read any clock. Well, we thank you for listening to Directional Learning and using your superpowers with us today. Remember, just use your superpowers when you tell time. So now you can go out and tell time. Thanks for watching Directional Learning.